Hi guys, how are you all? This is FJ What If? Today we are going to discuss about what if Naruto was Madara's student part 17. Before start the episode, please like and subscribe my channel. Chapter 17. Chains. In a Migakure Ryuyoke's, Naruto Uzumaki was making his way towards Pain's tower in the center of the village. He had been walking non-stop ever since he defeated Itachi Uchiha, the spy and traitor amongst the Akatsuki and the fallen heir of the Uchiha clan. Naruto promptly faced and defeated Itachi with minimal effort and placed him under the effects of his eyes. Though Naruto had discovered a weakness within his eyes' powers, and would have to discover the limits of their capabilities. Those who possess Mangekyo Sharingan can resist its effects, though Naruto could rectify that by channeling even more power into his eyes. However, Itachi had left a nice parting gift for the blonde in the form of a diagonal scar running from the ear and ending near Naruto's Adam's apple. That makes only 2 times that a permanent mark has ever been placed onto the blonde. The first time was when Sasuke killed him with his Kitari that left a scar upon his chest. That scar forever would serve as a reminder to him that only those close to you can truly harm you. That's why the blonde was so indifferent to allow anybody to close. They may just hurt him in the end, and the blonde had suffered enough in his life. But Naruto had to applaud Itachi for scarring him, as no one ever really possessed the power to do such a thing, at least such a thing that Naruto couldn't heal from. Even he had the Mangekyo Sharingan, but he never surmised that the eye itself could resist his powers. The Uchiha were surprising in many ways. He had healed Itachi of his injuries because the Sharingan-wielding blonde still had some uses for the older Uchiha brother, uses that Naruto was already planning to exploit. Things still needed to be manipulated into being. The villages need to be watched, as their parts to play in the grand scheme of things had yet to come. Every person, from man, woman, child and animal, had a part to play within Naruto's conspiracy. He had eyes and ears everywhere, his spies were numerous and his power near infinite. So long as nothing drastic happened to him, all the pieces will be falling into place and the world wouldn't even know what happened. Seeing Pain's tower getting closer and closer, Naruto inevitably took to the roofs, skirting across the buildings and jumping over each obstacle. The Akatsuki was basically in his pocket. The only one not adhering to his influence was Nagato, but still, dark intent always seeped into the hearts of the ones who least expected, and Naruto was nothing if not determined. Climbing higher and higher, Naruto could see the faces of the corpse of Yahiko and Konan, who looked strangely relieved. Naruto was a little baffled at what he saw. Was it a mirage? If it was, then such concepts as relief were beyond him. Konan could see the form of Ryu jumping from place to place like a frog upon lily pads. However, she frowned a little at what Nagato had in mind for him. She could sense that Ryu had swiftly apprehended Itachi and completed the mission to which he was assigned. She was recently told of it by Nagato just a few minutes ago. However, she spotted the scar upon Ryu's neck and knew that he was, of course, fine, since it wasn't bleeding, but she felt like she had to worry. More and more she was unraveling the secrets of Ryuyoke's. She could feel that there was still good in him, compassion, kindness and a helping hand. The only thing blocking these things was his refusal to accept that such things existed or ever will exist. Finally he made it to the tower's highest level, where Naruto saw the faces of Pain and Konan, walking in and shaking his form off any water that had rained upon him. Did he unseal the Shiroma Karen and returned it to Konan, where she gratefully accepted it back and mouthed a thank you to the blonde shinobi with the blood-red eyes, who nodded at her thanks? I take it that since your presence is here that Itachi has been dealt with, spoke Pain with his blank face at the young man who stared back at him with the Sharingan meeting Pain's Rinnegan. The words that were spoken between them that didn't require movement of the lips was all Nagato needed to know, that there was built-up aggression between the two of them and that it could be unleashed within a moment's notice with one false step. Itachi is still alive, though he won't be a threat to the organization anymore, spoke Naruto as he removed his eyes from Nagato's piercing ringed ones. As Naruto stared into those eyes, he wondered slightly if he would also awaken the Rinnegan. He had all the requirements necessary, combining Senju and Uchiha cells together, but if Madara was unable to awaken it until he reached the end of his natural lifespan, what did that mean for Naruto? Of course he regarded the fact that he didn't need the Rinnegan. He could control the Geto Mazo with just having Senju and Uchiha cells, though he required the Rinnegan to summon and use it. As of right now, there were only 2 pairs of Rinnegan in the world. The ones Nagato has is on his eyes and the hidden pair in the shadows. So long as this complication has been dealt with, your mission is a success. You have at least some use to the organization after all, spoke the Deva Path, and although Nagato wouldn't like to admit it, but he knew he couldn't have acquired an asset such as Yoke's if it weren't for the aid of Zetsu. though he always got the cold feeling that Yosuke was after something, or to put events into place to suit his own needs. Although I do understand that you have been bunkered down with missions, Yosuke, I'm afraid I have another that serves the Akatsuki's purposes. Naruto and Konan looked at the corpse of Yahiko quizzically, as to what he was referring to meant one thing: it didn't involve money. Naruto merely stood there, not voicing any complaints or backlashes, although he found it tedious that he'd been working like a dog with mission after mission, some not even worth his time or effort. He never got to do anything well more suited for him. Whatever he did do outside the Akatsuki was, of course, only for his benefit, and to further his plans, and in case he couldn't attend to his plans himself, Zetsu always offered his aid, as the plant man was key to the success of his schemes. He didn't know what Nagato had in mind, but if it involved seeing the man face to face, then it must have been noteworthy enough to bring it up in conversation. Konan also got the feeling that whatever Nagato was planning, it involved her and her blonde partner. She had been getting this strange feeling whenever she saw Ryu. Behind that emotionless facade of his and that blank stare in his eyes, he was hiding something that he refused to accept, something which he thought was really lost. Perhaps he didn't know about it, perhaps he merely thought it was an illusion. Whatever his thoughts, she knew it was buried deep, unlike Nagato, who was similar, but he only acknowledged that which caused him pain. Naruto denied its existence, and if he did, it meant that he was acknowledging his pain, to which he must think it's a weakness, and his pride rejected any sort of weakness. You have heard of the castle in Kusagakure that harbors the degenerate filth and the vile criminals of the world are sent to. Fuzukijo, Demon Lantern Castle, spoke Pain as he looked out onto the village, turning his eyes to the corners of his sockets, waiting Yokazu's response. Recently Nagato had received intel of a certain object that could further the Akatsuki's goals and ambitions. Needless to say, he was interested in the object, as anything that furthered his plans was beneficial to him, and him alone, while bringing his ultimate goal closer. Fuzukijo. The prison where vermin eat, shit and sleep all together. I don't see how worthless shinobi with little to no power would catch your eye, unless you wanted to experiment on them. If so, they could be worthy test subjects. I already have many experiments I want to conduct. It's not like anyone will miss them. It's not like they're wanted by the world. They're nobodies. Spoke Naruto, trying to deduce Nagato's train of thought. Nagato was one of the few people Naruto couldn't read like a book. It's as if he closed his pages a long time ago and refused to open them again, just like himself. No. Contacts of mine have informed me that there is a certain box, buried under Fuzukijo. The Gokuraku no Hako, Box of Paradise. It supposedly grants any wish to those who open it. With power such as that, it could further the progress of our ultimate goal and bring the world to a state I wish it to be. This is your new mission: retrieve the Gokuraku no Hako and bring it back to Amigakure. However, if you deem the box to be useless to our plans or possessing power that would be detrimental to our plan, destroy it. Kasami will be accompanying you, and Deidara will be overseeing your mission as its coordinator and will provide necessary escape for when the time is right. Spoke Pain as he turned his eyes back towards the village, and with those words, the door behind the three of them opened up, revealing Kasami, Hoshigaki and Deidara. Both seemed to prepared for the mission, possibly being told of it earlier, beforehand. Konan frowned a little at Nagato's words, as while he was speaking he hadn't mentioned her at all. She wondered what she would be doing while Naruto and the two other Akatsuki members would be doing. And what of me? Questioned Konan as she stared at Pain's back with her amber eyes washing over his form. What about you? I don't recall making mention of you while I was speaking to Yosuke. Spoke Pain, which made Konan look to the ground in obvious, but still well hidden hurt. The way he also spoke to her, as if she wasn't important, also contributed to her now changed mood. Nagato had never spoken to her in such a way, that's why it hurt. They trusted and cared for each other more than anyone. It almost sounded as if she wasn't needed. She already felt like that before, when she became an orphan. She didn't wish to be treated such a way now, as much as she would deny it. Her emotional state was fragile, after all. You will be staying within Amigakure. I'm sure the taxing nature of your assignments have been a burden upon you, both mind and body. You need to rest and recover your strength. Don't speak to her in such a way. Spoke Ryu, making Konan snapped her head towards him, and his eyes spoke, the truth as they were, narrowed a little towards the leader of the Akatsuki. I don't believe I was speaking to you. Yosuke. Spoke Pain as he turned to Ryu, where their eyes locked together and spoke their hidden animosity for each other. Say as much as you want about the rest of us, it's not like we care, we're fueled by other motives, but don't treat her in such a way, don't treat her as if she's a nobody, someone who wishes to achieve the same dream as you. Konan deserves just as much respect as any other agent of the Akatsuki. While she may not say it right now, she knows that she doesn't wish to be spoken to in such a way. Because she's my friend, spoke Naruto with a noticeable sneer on his face, while Conan seemed to be enlightened at his words and also confirming them to be true while also sporting a small smile at his words, especially friend. You lack respect for your betters yokais, spoke Pain as his rippled eyes narrowed at the insolence of the blonde-haired man. I have respect. Just not for you, spoke Ryu as he clenched his fist ready to attack the corpse in front of him. Conan is coming with me. Deidara is not needed for the moment, his capabilities and uses are needed elsewhere. Conan will better serve the success of this mission, her talents and abilities make her perfect for this assignment. And she's stronger than you know, spoke Naruto, making a stand against Nagato. No one ever deserved to be treated as if they were nobody, like he was. The staring contest between the two was so condensed with aggression that the air itself was become dense and heavy. The antipathy the two had was so palpable that it was radiating off them like an aura. Deidara took a step back a little at the heated stare-off, knowing that shit was about to hit the fan. Naruto had little respect for those who treated their closest friends in such a way. It's almost as if he encountered a similar situation long ago. It was foggy but there. Fine, spat Pain as he turned his eyes away from the blonde. Do as you wish, just remove yourself from my presence, said the Rinnegan wielder as he turned his back on Naruto. It's not as if Nagato regarded Conan as useless, he was just trying to separate her from Ryu as he didn't approve of their closeness on an emotional and professional level. He wasn't blind to it, there were unspoken things between the two of them that neither couldn't see. With that said, Deidara huffed a little and went to leave the village, knowing he was no longer important in the mission. He along with Kasami were the first ones out of the room while Naruto took hold of Kanen's hand and led her out. It was a gesture of comfort on his part as he was unaware and unknowing that she still needed some comfort from it all. She would never say it in Pain's presence, but she appreciated the fact that Naruto defended her. Before, her pride would never have allowed another to defend her honor, but was she changing for the better? Of course, what Naruto said was not an insult to her, he was merely defending a friend from harm, as any other would do for their friends. On their way out of the village, Conan mouthed a small thank you to the blonde, which in return made him smile a little. And also, not knowing that in her he had discovered something in her, something he was still unaware of. Naruto opened a portal which led to Kusagakyure and explained his plan to his two compatriots, Kasami and Conan. Elsewhere in the Land of Fire, in the capital, Sakura had arrived and immediately she was settled in her room within Inzi Husoku's mansion. Sakura gasped when she first saw the mansion. It was large and spacious, probably fitting over 1,000 people. Her room was more than suitable, giving her a window with a gracious view and allowing the sun would creep through her window. She and Inzi were currently going to a party that was being held in her honor for representing Konoha in the courts of the Land of Fire. It was to be at the Palace of the Dying Flame. There she would be introduced to the many nobles and bureaucrats of the Land of Fire and the courts. Though she will be by inside the whole time, as she was quite nervous to be around such people of high social and political standing. She wondered at all if the daimyo would appear, but she shoved that back into her mind, believing that he might not show at all, probably doing the daimyo's duty of governing the country. She was at the moment wearing a flowery pink kimono that Inzi had bought for her, as she didn't have much formal wear and she had her pink hair up in a ponytail. When they arrived, they were immediately greeted with a large vacant hall with tables of food from all around the province and other countries. Many people wearing only the most expensive and fashionable clothes were among them, with servants at the ready to cater to their needs and wipe their asses. Many people were already enthralled with the festivities and drinking the most aged and delicious wines and feasting upon small but delectable food. Sakura merely widened her eyes at the scene and was uncertain how to react to such commotion. There was jolly laughter and smile all around. Stay close to me, these vultures will love nothing more than to get close to you, either in your good graces or between your legs, spoke Inzi, making Sakura nodding at him and confirming her suspicions that some of the nobles were sleazy perverts. That what she thought, seeing some of the prolonged stares and repugnant smiles. At the moment she had to regard everyone around her as her enemies. They might possibly have a knife hidden within their robes. She couldn't hold In's hand as he kept it tucked into his sleeves, and the action would most likely cause her hand to bleed because of all the sharp metal on his hands. This place is basically a battleground. If you're not careful, you'll be stabbed in the head. The amount of casualties in this place is pretty high. The conflicts of the courts have led many rich and successful men and women to lose everything within a snap of one's fingers. At the moment you have nothing to lose, but still, you will in time, therefore you'll be another soldier on the battleground. Soon a man dressed in an elaborate kimono appeared and greeted the two to his party. Husoku-san, pleasure to see again. I hope your trip to Konoha was a profitable one, said the noble before turning his eyes upon Sakura. A profitable one indeed, and this amazing specimen must be Sakura Haruno. Welcome to my home, said the man where he kissed the top of Sakura's hand, making her blush a little at his actions. Your arrival has many of the nobles and diplomats here up in arms and high spirits, and I hope you enjoy yourself at my party. As you can see, we spared no expense, taken from the treasury itself. We have food, drink and entertainment from all over the 5 great nations, so if you find something that is suited to your needs, just let me know and I will see to it, said the man as he spread out his arms, gesturing to his party as the nobles and diplomats continued partying and their tedious activities. And how many people can be fed with the amount of money used to fund this party? Spoke Inzi as he narrowed his eyes at the man while the noble sneered at the caramel-haired man. Oh please Inzi, not another of your lectures. The peasants will never revolt, they're weak and will never be nothing more than the trash they are, spoke the man as he waved off the warnings of his fellow diplomat. You forget I happen to be one of the trash that crawled through the mud to get to where I am, replied Inzi, to which the man nearly faulted. Well, I guess some are just born lucky, I suppose. The noble then clapped his hands where a young girl appeared holding a bowl of what appeared to be nuts. The noble plucked a nut from said bowl and chewed graciously on it, until he remembered something. He didn't like nuts at the moment. What is this poison? You stupid whore, said the man as he slapped the girl where she fell to the ground, where the bowl smashed against the ground and the nuts fell everywhere. You can never get anything right. You're trash. And your family is trash. Perhaps I shall pay that sister of yours another visit, yelled the noble as he stomped his foot on the girl repeatedly to make sure his point got through. Hey, stop it, yelled Sakura as she first noticed the abuse. Her heart wrenched from just seeing the despicable actions of the man who appeared nice. Why should I? She is trash. Nothing more, but fine, my leg was getting tired anyway, said the host before leaving to tend to more of his guests. Sakura got down on the ground and helped the poor girl and lifted her up back onto her feet. Are you okay? Questioned Sakura as she looked over the girl who appeared to be no older than her. Yes, I'm fine, Haruno-sama, bless you, said the girl as she bowed at Sakura, who was taken back by the gesture. Other than a few bruises to which Sakura healed, the girl was going to be fine. The girl then left to clean herself up, leaving Sakura with Inzi. You did a noble thing. No one here would have even noticed what was happening, as they're too busy caring for themselves than for others, and what you just saw is more than less a common occurrence, spoke Inzi as he smiled down at Sakura. I know, he would have done the same also, and that man, he probably wouldn't know what tired is if it smacked him in the face. It's not like rain pummeled his body while starving and contemplating whether or not you would see tomorrow, or the horror of waking up in nothing but blood. Sorry, I was rambling again, spoke Sakura with clear disgust as she eyed at host who was speaking to his guests and acting as if nothing happened. She couldn't just stand by and let others suffer. Her high moral standing as a medic would never allow it, and Naruto would have done the same thing, only she handled it better. Don't get too complacent. This war around us is not over yet. We're swimming with sharks and running with wolves. But if you're careful and watch your step, you'll walk out with both your arms. You can make enemies just as quickly as shinobi when within these halls, and if you cross the wrong people, you will pay for it. And dearly, just do as I do and you will live until tomorrow, warned Inzi as he stared out across the people. Some were even eyeing Sakura, and he could already guess as to what they were up to. Both the metal-clasped man and the pink-haired girl then felt a presence behind them, a ghastly one that seemed to breathe contempt to anyone within its presence. Inzi growled a little at the feeling of presence and turned to see a rather ghoulish noble with dark clothes. She was tall as he was, and he never bothered to look her way for long. Hello, Inzi, rather nice get together, wouldn't you say? Questioned the noble as she drank some wine that was in her hand. And whose bed have you whored your way into now? Is the sap still wanting what you gave him, or is he sobbing on the street from what you took from him? Spoke Inzi with a scowl. Honestly, he never liked the parties he tended to. The people he would fraternize with were always such a bore to him. They would talk about their riches, food, family. They didn't give two shits about whatever the reason. Inzi knew it wasn't going to be fun. But he was a high-ranking diplomat. He had to attend the parties lest his reputation be tarnished. Not that he cared in the least. Come now, Inzi, we're all friends here, or in the very least on Christmas card terms with one another. And this must be the beautiful flower you plucked from Konoha. Sakura Haruno, we heard so much about you, but I never expected a hidden village to have such a fine variety of beauty. Please, you must regale us with your adventures. I'm sure you're just bursting to tell us. Sakura meanwhile was taken back a little. How much did they know about her exactly? She had only been in the capital for a few hours, and to be quite honest, she was shaking like a newborn puppy without warmth from the nervousness of her surroundings. And she didn't consider her missions to be very eventful and awe-inspiring. Well, mumbled Sakura before she saw another prepped-up woman coming from nowhere. Unlike the other one, his person looked more like a diplomat than a noble. Come now, stop teasing the girl, you'll turn the poor thing scarlet, and besides, there will be plenty of time for her to talk about how exciting the life of a shinobi is, later. Spoke the diplomat, making the noble woman pout a little before leaving on her way. The diplomat then turned back to Sakura, and the Konoha Kunoichi could see warmth in her eyes that rarely anybody else had around her. But no, really, Haruno-sama, we are excited to have you here. I'm sure you'll be nothing but a positive influence upon the courts, and if you need any advice, come to me for anything. In fact, I have a son who is around your age, I'm sure I can set something up between the two of you. Spoke the diplomat with those same warm eyes, and Sakura raised her eyebrows at the woman in confusion, where she then heard chuckling to her side to see Inzi snickering a little. You know, that this ploy of yours never works, besides doesn't your son have certain interests? I'm sure he wouldn't be interested in Sakura here. Spoke Inzi with a small smile as the diplomat huffed a little and pouted ever so softly. You see, there you go again, ruining the fun as always, and just because it hasn't worked till now doesn't mean it won't be successful in the future, it just depends on finding the right girl for him. Spoke the diplomat, daydreaming about her future, grandkids and her happy life. Why don't you give him a sausage? I'm sure he would like that. Chuckled Inzi, where the diplomat lightheartedly slapped him on the shoulder, and before chuckling herself, before leaving to meet with some of her friends. Who was that? Questioned Sakura as she looked at her escort confusedly. A colleague of mine, we just so happen to have the same mind on all the troubles occurring within the Land of Fire. We've been working together for months now to quell the hostility, but it's been slow progress. But let's not think about that for the moment and try to enjoy ourselves. Spoke Inzi, where he walked about with Sakura in tow. So they enjoyed themselves for the time being, well, at least tried to. They weren't like all the other nobles and diplomats. They did have some cups of sake and even some snacks on the side, but other than that it would be a long night for the two of them, and it didn't give them any signs of letting up either way. Kusoku-sama, yelled a man with a bright orange kimono, and walked up to the two of them, where he patted Inzi on the shoulder, avoiding his hands, and by his side was a strawberry blonde woman around his age. I don't know if you remember me, but we met during the crisis between the Land of Spring and the Land of Fire. How could I forget? Said Inzi with a smile, even though he was bullshitting through his teeth. He didn't remember the guy. I don't often intervene between countries and the civil problems and foreign heads of state. Wait, actually yes. It's pretty normal for me. You remind me a great deal of a young yellow-haired boy who saved my country, turning the Land of Snow into the Land of Spring. Spoke the man, remembering that certain boy rather fondly, and he spoke those exact same words when there was a party at the daimyo's. When the diplomats and nobles questioned, he said those same words, exactly. He also didn't notice the pained expression on Sakura's face, who stayed quiet during the while greeting. Who is this man? Beloved. Spoke the woman next to him with rudeness and with some disgust in her voice, probably not liking the party or the people she was around. I beg your pardon, Husoku-sama, darling, this is Inzi Husoku, the carnivore, and this is my lovely wife. Spoke the man in the orange kimono. Beloved, I need to speak with you right now. About the horrible things those witches are saying. Said the man's wife before storming off, leaving her quivering husband, who had a slightly scared expression on his face. Of course, please excuse me, Husoku-sama. A pleasure to meet you again. Oh, and my brother is here. It's best if you don't mention ins or panties. Said the noble, where he chased after his wife. Do you know who that is? Questioned Sakura as she turned to Inzi. No clue. They were about to take a step backwards when a screeching voice echoed through the hall. Ah. Husoku-sama. Inzi didn't need to know who the voice belonged to while Sakura was checking her ears to see if they were bleeding. They both turned around to see a slightly plump woman and two, homely daughters standing directly behind them. Oh, Husoku-sama, could you not have stopped my son before he fell into such depravities? He didn't actually become an assassin, that was just a rumor to elevate his status of fear. Spoke Inzi as he dropped his head a little. He had already dealt with this family before, and he wasn't up to doing it right now. An assassin I could deal with, but this whore he dallied with, she's insufferable. The horror she's inflicted on our summer house in the name of decorating is an atrocity. Spoke the slightly plump woman, who looked as if she was going to faint, not that Inzi would care or do anything about it. Allow me to express my deepest sympathies, m'lady, on the ruin of your summer home. Spoke Inzi with dismal emotion and with a dreary facial expression. She filled the main room with, "Oh, my heart cannot say. I cannot bear to think of this anymore any longer. Good day, Husoku-sama," spoke the woman where she walked away with her only daughters in tow, while Sakura just shook her head at the scene. Were all nobles like this? It was clear to say that Sakura and Inzi were clearly not enjoying themselves, as most of the guests were birching about their problems or what their children did and who they slept with or who cheated who out of a game. It was all a tiresome affair of gossiping, that's all anybody did. My, I didn't think you would actually attend events such as these, and with this little dove of Konoha, this is quiet unlike you, Inzi, who spiked your drink. Spoke a woman with blonde hair and a blue kimono. I was hoping it would be a shock, part of my plan to become the most talked about noble in the 5 great nations. Spoke Inzi with a smile and sarcasm which made Sakura giggle a little and the woman in the blue dress to chuckle at his antics. If I'm any judge, your scheme will succeed. What do you think of the party so far? My good friend, spoke the woman. Just like any other party I've been to, an excuse to get drunk and sleep with anything that will respond to you. I can already see some affairs happening at the moment, said Inzi as he looked around himself, confirming his suspicions. And yet I also get the feeling that everybody here is a moment away from tearing each other apart. Don't get between the ladies and nobles of the courts and their wine, and we shall certainly see bloodshed. And don't make eye contact either, they can sense fear, said the woman. We should probably go mingle a bit more, said Sakura, who was a little uplifted from the playful banter between Inzi and the diplomat. And this must be the elegant dove you brought back from Konoha, said the woman. I can already see that men will be falling to their knees begging for her hand. With such exotic hair and gorgeous eyes, the men and women here would never have guessed that you came from Konoha. Thank you, said Sakura as she bowed a little. Word of advice, anybody in this place wearing black, white, and or blue are your friends, anybody else are drunken buffoons. Have fun, said the woman before she left to mingle with the crowd. And with that, Sakura and Inzi left to enjoy the party some more, where the host brought out entertainment in the form of clowns and fire dancers. Everyone simply marveled at the spectacle, while also knowing it was expensive to bring in entertainment of such high class. Oh, Inzi Husoku. What a surprise, drawled a young-looking noble who just happened to be In's arch-nemesis, Kenka, In's biggest rival, who had orangish-brown curly hair with a small stubble on his chin and wearing orange robes. The basic words that Inzi would say about the man was cunt. They were enemies out to kill each other. Both had large and powerful friends and allies within their pockets, but whenever Inzi made a move, this man, by the name of Kenka, was sure to follow. I see your time with the common folk has done little to persuade you from retiring from the courts. And by Kenka's side was a young woman with oily black hair. Kenka dear, introduce me to your delicious friend, spoke the girl. But what shocked Inzi and Sakura was the fact that the girl had a man's voice. Like, no kidding, she literally sounded like a man, deep voice and all. Out of fear, both Inzi and Sakura took a step back away from Kenka and his associate. Kawaii, meet my greatest political rival and the man I hate most, a dirty peasant if there ever was one, spoke Kenka as he snarled at Inzi, who merely brushed it off while Sakura was tightening her fist at the man. This got really awkward and tense at the same time, so can we talk about something else, whispered Sakura to Inzi, who merely nodded at her. Well, as much as I would love to stay and amuse you, Kenka, I would rather not stare at your pathetic face for much longer. The canaps are more interesting than this conversation, and I am simply annoyed at how everyone here is so upper class, spoke Inzi, adding in the subtle insult to Kenka, who gritted his teeth at the metal-clasped man. What an astute observation. I will see you in the courts, Inzi. Don't try to embarrass yourself further. We have enough peasants among us that they can dirty up this whole hall. And watch yourself too, Sakura Haruno. I'm sure we will be seeing each other again very soon, spoke Kenka, where he left with his man-speaking woman. I hate that cunt, said Sakura as she glared at the retreating back of Kenka. Too bad, you don't get what you wish for, spoke Inzi as he also glared at Kenka, but this glare felt more empty and bloodthirsty. And finally they were back to enjoying themselves, though Sakura could have sworn she heard angry shouting just outside the palace. However, she brushed it off, thinking it was a figment of her imagination. Sakura then heard some ruckus over and near the center of the hall where she saw what appeared to be a man dressed in elaborate cloths, wearing a unique headpiece, and next to him was a large cake, as tall as he was, and to his other side was a plump woman with a short, illustrious cape and smothering a cat to her bosom, while the cat appeared to be crying, with many designs and features that nobles would be associated with. She then recognized the man as the Fire, Deo, and his insufferable wife Madame Shijimi. God, she hated these two people, because they were just so annoying. "Thank you all for coming," spoke the Madame Shijimi in a loud voice. However, Sakura and Inzi could see that something was wrong. They thought they could see embers and smoke just outside the windows of the hall and some angry shouting. The two then looked at each other for a split second before looking out the windows again. Sakura narrowed her eyes at this, wondering what could be causing it, while Inzi had a fair guess as to what it could be. Then they could hear even more angry shouting from coming outside the hall, growing in volume while the musicians increased the strength of their music. Despite the rubes outside, our illustrious host, the Lord of the Hall, wishes to assure you that the rabble outside can cause us no harm while we are inside these walls, spoke Madame Shijimi without a care in the world. And to thank our host for his proper etiquette, we will allow him to cut the comminus. But her words were silenced when a brick broke through the glass window pane of the hall and lodged itself into the skull of Madame Shijimi, effectively killing her, and soon her body fell into the cake as blood pooled across the pastry. The people all around the hall screamed in horror and despair at the image they saw and the dead look in the madame's eyes. Many had believed her words when they said they were safe, but merely that was false. The cat meanwhile seemed to be kissing the brick that killed her before jumping through a window, making its escape. Inzi and Sakura merely stood there in shock at what was happening as even more bricks and rocks began breaking through the windows and even some arrows raining down from within. They quickly took cover behind an upturned table as the nobles and diplomats began evading the deadly mortar, and soon they were joined by Kenka and his compatriot Kawai. The Deo meanwhile was being escorted out of the hall by his guards and taken to relative safety, while the others in the hall were left to fend for themselves. "The peasants are rising against us, but how? Why?" yelled one of the nobles before a stray arrow pierced his eye before falling to the ground dead. Inzi, lifting his head above the table to get a good view, could see the main doors of the hall being battered continuously. Those so-called peasants found themselves a battering ram. "We need to leave. They're in a blind rage. They'll attack anything wearing bright colors, even though we're on their side," yelled Inzi above all the frantic screaming to Sakura, who merely nodded and tried to not have her head smashed by the mortar. "I know a way out of the hall. We have to be fast," yelled Inzi again before picking up a silver platter and hovered it above his head, using it a makeshift shield, with his three companions doing the same. "Kenka dear, what do we do?" yelled Kawai with her voice that sounded like a man's. "Follow the mud. He knows what he's doing. I hope," spoke Kenka. And soon enough the four of them made a mad dash towards the escape Inzi was telling us about, and right at that moment the peasantess broke through the halls and began slaughtering everyone with bright colors, just as Inzi said. They avoided every sort of weapon that could kill them and did the best they could not to look back at the oncoming horde of angry citizens. Though Kenka did, and that only pissed them off even more. They made their way up a flight of stairs, jumping up multiple steps to reach their destination. When they reached the top, Kawai fell over because of her own clumsiness, like in one of those cliché horror movies where the heroes always trips over random objects that couldn't trip them in the first place, where they are killed by the bad guy. She then latched onto the leg of Kenka. "Kenka dear, please save me," pleaded Kawai as she tugged on Kenka's leg. But the noble flared his arms in an exaggerated way and uttered a gross peasant before pulling his leg away and followed after Inzi and Sakura. Kawai felt her body grappled by the peasants before she was thrown off a balcony out of the hall, where she landed in the midst of the riot, where many of the angry citizens swarmed around her and beat her and kicked at her form, where a man with a sword came from nowhere with a sword and decapitated her with a swift stroke of his sword, where her head fell off her shoulders as it rolled across the ground as the headless body flopped to the ground. The same citizen then rammed Kawai's head onto his sword and paraded around with it, as if it was a trophy with all the other heads of the nobles. Inzi, Sakura and Kenka were still making their way through the halls, trying to outrun the horde behind them. They quickly made a turn to their left, where they approached the door, which Sakura broke down with her chakra-enhanced strength. The three then ducked into another room, where Inzi hefted a cabinet out of the way, revealing a small door, which would lead to their escape and their salvation through a small tunnel. Quickly navigating through the small tunnel did the three of them find themselves on the outside of the hall, on an abandoned street that the citizens hadn't swarmed. Quickly helping Sakura to her feet, could Inzi see the shadows of four citizens with pitchforks. Knowing he needed to take action, Inzi rushed forward towards the group of civilians as they turned the corner and spotted him rushing towards them, not afraid of the oncoming diplomat. The first citizens was also the first to spot him, and before he could assess the threat, Inzi appeared in front of him and used his metallic talons on his fingers to slice the man's throat where the civilian was spun around where he faced his fellow brothers in arms. The other three didn't notice that one of their comrades had been taken down as he was a bit ahead of the other three, but when he faced them and raised his hand to his throat did they see the blood dripping through his fingers and the horrified look on his face. The other three quickly gasped at the scene. And soon enough the man's body fell to the ground with In's silhouette appearing behind him, crouching to the ground with a metal-clasped hand on the man's body. Inzi then ran forward and jumped through the air landing on another man with his metal-clasped feet on his chest where Inzi stabbed his metal talons into the man's neck, killing him instantly and swiftly as the talons pierced the man's trachea, cutting him off from air. Another man then pulled out a knife and tried to stab Inzi vertically downward and with little skill as he probably never used the knife for violence, rather using it to cut cheese and meat. Inzi then grappled with the man as he caught the stabbing motion, with his hands as his comrade rushed at him with his pitchfork, trying to gore Inzi and save his friend, while Inzi who caught the knife merely redirected the man's knife into his stomach, killing and avoiding the pitchfork skillfully, almost as if he predicted the man's movements. The last citizen then turned to face Inzi again, and tried to stab him with the pitchfork, only for Inzi to strafe to the side, grip one of his deadly hands on the weapon, and then punch the man in the face, where fragments of sharp metal was embedded into the man's face. Then Inzi kicked him away where even more metal was lodged into the man's body where he grunted in pain. Inzi then spun the weapon around and gored the man with a swift blow piercing his lungs, killing him. Kenka and Sakura who were watching merely stared at Inzi with bated breaths and shocked expressions. Sakura especially was taken back at the sheer ruthlessness of Inzi and his merciless actions. When he talked about the potential for good that all human beings had, she believed that he was a man that could do no wrong, who pushed his dreams and goals in a way that could only bring about a positive change. She even believed that he couldn't kill even a fly just from how nice he was, but it seemed as if Sakura was wrong about a few certain things. While the men he just killed wouldn't spare a thought about killing her and possibly raping her, it still didn't change the fact that Inzi just killed the people he swore himself to help. Sakura then saw him fumble around with the dead bodies before stripping them of their clothes, making Kenka and Sakura wonder what he was doing and what it involved. "Quickly, put on their clothes, more will be coming and we want to blend in," spoke Inzi as he discarded his black and white kimono in favor of ragged clothes, such as a dirty white shirt, dark brown jacket, and blue jeans with holes in them. "I am not dressing up as a peasant," spoke Kenka as he crossed his arms with a clear disgusted look on his face while Sakura ran over to Inzi and quickly stripped down to her mild embarrassment. Kenka meanwhile could hear shouting and he had beads of sweat running down his neck. Truth be told, Inzi didn't care whether or not he followed his advice, but if he wanted to live he might as well listen to what he says. Swallowing up his stubborn pride, Kenka followed suit and quickly dressed up in new and smelly clothes. "We need to get out of here. If we make it back to the mansion we might be safe," said Sakura as she adjusted a knit cap on her head and tucked the strands of her luscious pink hair into the cap as she wore an overcoat that covered most of her body. "We can't," spoke Inzi with annoyance and exasperation in his voice. Sakura questioned the diplomat on why such a thing was a bad idea. "We can't go back. On the off chance that we do get back to the mansion, it could be raided just like the hall, and it's a fair distance away. If the citizens discover who we are, we're as good as dead anyway. No, it's better if we meet up with some friends of mine, they'll help us. I hope," spoke Inzi before he started running through streets and alleys that were not being crowded with people, ducking their way through the maze known as the city. They quickly and swiftly dodged groups of citizens with sharp weapons and bloodthirsty intent. Inzi knew that what was happening was not just a random occurrence. He believed that there were other forces at work. Rallying the citizens to rise up against their oppressor sounded like a good story indeed, but Inzi had to wonder if the organization he was heading to had any involvement. He highly doubted it as his friends weren't the sort that would keep their hands clean. They handled the dirty jobs just fine. Quickly ducking into an alley with a dead end and with the shouts of the riot getting closer, Sakura could see a burly, balded-head man with tattered clothes and a mean look on his face. She could also see what she thought was a flower upon the door. Of course it was faded, and some of the imprint was gone, but she knew it was a flower. Did Inzi lead them to a brothel? She didn't know what to think of this. She had been chosen out of thousands of shinobi to represent Konoha, and yet on her first day on the job. Well, technically she hadn't actually been involved in politics yet, so she hadn't even started, and yet already people were trying to kill her. Looking back she could see embers and smoke rising all around the city. The riot had completely swept all around. The blood-curdling shouts and screams were enough for any person to question, why were they there? Was this planned? This shouldn't have happened. Be truthful, none of this in fact should have happened. By then the party had arrived before the burly man, who crossed his arms and stared down upon all three of them. Up close, he looked about to be 8 feet tall. Invitation? Questioned the burly man, while Kenka and Sakura flinched a little at his scary demeanor. Petals fall and die. When night fades and becomes black, only then will our true dreams become real and absolute. Spoke Inzi with little to no emotion in his voice, while Sakura raised an eyebrow at the change of tone in his voice, it almost as if it sounded like he had no emotions whatsoever, almost as if he had entered a void and the void spat him back out. The burly man nodded at him and opened the door, where he eyed the two others with a cautious gaze. She knew to expect you, spoke the burly man, while he allowed Inzi and his followers through the door while he closed it behind him. And now they were making their way through a small tunnel, with leaking pipes and wet ground where constant splashing could be heard as they walked on the moist ground, leading to a destination that was unknown to them. They soon entered a large, metal hall with a cold, dense feeling in the air, and weapons decorating and lining every wall was visible, every weapon possible. It was completely empty, but Sakura could feel it. They were watching them, cold eyes that betrayed nothing. Also in the hall was 4 banners with black and red flowers that appeared to be lotus. What this all meant to Sakura was unknown to her, but she had to question, how did Inzi know these people who were watching them? Well, this is rather due minus, spoke Kenka, bored with what he saw until he was silenced from speaking more, when he felt a sword to his throat, where he saw a man, to his right, dressed in a black coat, wearing a peculiar mask and armor, and carrying very sharp katanas. When Kenka stared into the eyes of the man, he saw nothing but an empty black void behind those holes, and soon others dropped, all around them, surrounding them, cutting them off from escape. And they were all wearing the exact same armor, masks and swords. Inzi had to mentally slap himself at the stupidity of Kenka. You never make a sound nor a movement around these people. The slightest movement made them act on instinct, and they weren't Kenka's biggest fans. They could literally smell the repugnant stench of a higher class individual, and the cologne he was wearing. Sakura followed In's example and didn't make a sound or action as she was watched by the mysterious people in black. The slug was breathing so heavily we could have killed him in the dark, spoke a voice who dropped down from above. She was wearing leather dress armor reminiscent of the samurai era, with a blood-red interior and a black bodysuit that only showed her collarbone and head. She had a purple obi wrapped around her waist, and 2 katanas upon her back, with a red bandana around her jet black hair, and her steel-sharp, green eyes peered into the souls in front of her. "Hello, Karai," said Inzi with a small smile. "It's so good to minus." However, he was quickly cut off from speaking more when Karai slapped him across the face, where she left a red imprint on his face in the shape of a hand. Kenka tried to suppress a laugh at the scene, while Sakura was taken back by the action and the clear level of disrespect. Though her mother did say that men could be pigs, perhaps Inzi was one of them. But still she had to wonder about the relationship between him and Karai. "I'm guessing you didn't deserve that," spoke Sakura with a slightly confused look on her face after witnessing the action. "No, I definitely deserve that," said Inzi as he turned back to Karai, who was glaring at him. Then he turned back to Sakura. "It's a long and complicated tale. Let's just say, someone of her price. You need more than 2 chickens. What do you want, Inzi? If you're looking for the Shogun, warlord, then he's not here. He's attending to some business and won't be back for some time. Unless you have business with the Kakuren, Black Lotus, directly. If so, the price will be hefty, and the Shogun will certainly not approve. Tedious tasks are not our area of expertise," spoke Karai with a mysterious voice that belied her curiosity. "I know the Shogun isn't here, and I'm sure he won't mind if we hired your services. Don't worry, we're more alike, me and him, than you think. Some could say I know him better than anyone else. But you're the only one that can help," spoke Inzi, scratched his chin softly with his metal talons while Karai narrowed her eyes at him. She then raised her hand and clenched her fist, where the Kakuren soldiers eased up and sheathed their swords back into their scabbards, and took a few steps back away from the group. "What is it you need? Speak fast," spoke Karai as she walked away from the group and traveled down some steps where even more Kakuren soldiers appeared and began lining up in a formation. Sakura counted at least 100 soldiers within the room. She wondered if there were more members of the Kakuren that even she was aware of. Deciding to speak up for Inzi, Sakura voiced her needs to Karai. "We need to get back to our mansion. It may be raided by the citizens, and if so, we need protection, as there are far too many angry citizens, and I'm under orders not to harm them," spoke Sakura, to which Inzi nodded while Karai turned her head to look at her as she kept walking, and to Sakura it looked like she was inspecting her. Karai then stopped in her stride, and then held out her right arm to the side and clenched her fist where 20 members of the Kakuren disappeared from sight. Shen then held out her left and flicked her wrist where 20 others disappeared from sight. Done. Owen, take this, said Karai, pulling something off her body, 2 seals tags from within her armor. Leave. Also, I want payment in cash. We'll be in this location for 3 more days before we meet with the Shogun second in command. Until then you better have payment. The Kakuren always pay their debts, and so should their clients. Inzi, Sakura and Kenka did what she said, and quickly left without a trace out the same way they came, only this time with an escort of Kakuren shinobi. When Inzi, Sakura and Kenka left, Inzi slapped 2 seals upon Sakura and Kenka's foreheads that made them forget the last 15 minutes of what they saw. And soon all 3 of them were heading to In's mansion, who had a sickly smirk on his face, and every now and again, his brown eyes would flash from brown to red with Tomo in them. Elsewhere in a small cafe near Kusagakure were 2 individuals, wearing black cloaks emblazoned with red clouds. One had spiky, sun-kissed golden, blonde hair with chin-length strands that framed the sides of his face and strands that fell between his eyes and parted at the bridge of his nose, and he had a low, spiky, ponytail that was wrapped with taut bandages. And his eyes were blood red with Tomo within them and an empty, emotionless look in them. The other was a clearly taller man with a muscular build, and he had distinctive shark-like features with blue-gray skin, small round white eyes with gill-like facial markings underneath his eyes and sharp triangular teeth. Dark blue hair stylized into a shark's fin. Both Ryuyoke's, Naruto Uzumaki, and Kasami Hoshigaki were sitting in a small cafe. One was simply drinking some delectable green tea while the other was feasting upon some roast lamb he had ordered and was wolfing it down like an animal, well, more like a shark, while his red-eyed partner looked at him in complete disgust at his actions. "Do you really have to eat your food with such vigor?" stated the blonde-haired man as he sipped on more of his tea while he watched his temporary partner gulp down some more meat. "Well, they say sharks are the garbage cans of the ocean. They eat just about anything. And I like to consider myself not so different from them, so if you don't mind, I would like to enjoy my meal, unless you're on the menu," spoke Kasami, making a just threat to Yoke's, who raised his eyebrows at the man. Didn't the shark man not remember the last time that fought where Naruto left him near death? Besides, are you sure this plan will work? "Like pouring oil on fire," said Naruto as he sipped on his tea and looked out the window. "Might want to finish that meat of yours. You might not get a good meal for a few weeks." And soon enough the windows of the cafe were broken down where shinobi of Kusagakure came bursting through, where many of the patrons began screaming and falling over tables as the shinobi began arresting anybody in sight, while their true targets were 2 men sitting in the corner. Naruto said the corner was the most suspicious, so they would obviously look there. Barely 5 seconds passed before the shinobi spotted them enjoying their lunch. They were quickly dragged to the ground while their cups and plates smashed to the ground and were separated into pieces. Naruto then felt a leg on the back of his neck restraining him and then felt his hands being bound. "Ryuyoke's, Kasami Hoshigaki, you're under arrest," spoke one of the shinobi, pinning the 2 Akatsuki members to the ground. Naruto smirked a little at seeing that his plan worked, while Kasami grinned wickedly. "It worked," said the shark man as the 2 were hoisted up and dragged out of the cafe where 2 wooden cages were waiting for them. They were soon thrown into them and sat themselves down, trying to get comfortable for their journey ahead of them. While among the trees, wearing a black coat, the same one Naruto would always wear, she had blue hair and amber eyes, and she disappeared within the trees, knowing that her mission wasn't over. So now, they were on a rickety old rowboat that was swaying side to side because of the raging waves and strong currents of the lake that surrounded their destination. They avoided razor-sharp rocks that would have skewered their boat and torn into their only protection. They could hear the thunder above them striking the sky as their bodies were pelted by the rain. Kasami merely sat there in his wooden cage, mumbling about how the people were intolerable and annoying, and how his butt was sore. Naruto meanwhile looked up into the sky through the gaps in his wooden cage. He appeared to be entranced by the lights in the sky coming from the lightning fluttering about, and he looked nourished as the rain struck his face and dripped down the sides of his cheeks and soaked his hair as his clothes and hair clung tightly to his form, it almost as if it felt like euphoria to him. There was something about storms, almost as if he was truly born within the storm. Sometimes whenever there was a storm, he would just take the time to watch it from his position, almost as if the clouds and the thunder were calling out to him, to be amongst the clouds, not to be tethered to the world by anything or anyone, just to fly amongst the clouds and do battle with the lightning. "Seems like those prisoners, or should I say, garbage, will have new meat to play with," said one of the rowers as he looked back at Naruto and Kasami. "Wonder how long they'll last before they break. Don't know about them, they're supposed to be some big shots. But they won't be getting out anytime soon. No one escapes Suzukijo." It's impossible, said another of the rowers. I heard there's one way. This time a guard said it as he stared at the two S-ranked criminals. Really? Said another of the guards sarcastically. Through a body bag. Naruto and Kasami paid them no attention, although they were a bit miffed at the guards taking their Akatsuki cloaks. As one of Akatsuki was still mumbling while another was still staring into the stormy sky. And soon through the mist and hazy fog, they could see it, their objective Huzukijo. A massive castle built upon a cliff that housed all sorts of lowlifes of the world from murderers, rapists to the worst sort of scum the world had to offer. Naruto knew that escape was always a possibility, no prison was ever inescapable, it wasn't impossible, just difficult. The castle was large, featuring massive walls that no one could physically jump over, several large guard towers that could spot any sort of escape and offering a few with little to no blind spots. To be honest, it looked more like a compound for some powerful clan during the era of the warring clans, fit to house many members within its walls and to provide protection from invading forces. The two criminals were then loaded off the boat where 8 men, wearing ponchos and straw hats were waiting for them, where they quickly grasped the wooden cages and carried the 2 criminals off to Huzukijo while the 4 men carrying Kasami had a little trouble adjusting to his weight. As they passed by trees and bushes towards the castle, Naruto noted that the storm had died down and was no longer raging in the sky. He also noticed that the castle was surrounded by various plants with red flowers, the ground being fertile for the flowers to grow on. Soon both parties stopped before a door with the symbols of all the 5 great hidden villages upon the door, denoting the fact that the prison catered to all villages, not just Kusagakure. The 2 men within their cages were soon dropped over white circles where many guards with their weapons ready to be drawn stood before them, with stalwart faces and rigid forms. Then another chubby one that reminded Naruto of an Akimichi stepped forth from the bodies, where his large gut could easily be seen jiggling, much to the disgust of everyone, even Kasami. "Attention!" yelled the bloated man, even though he didn't need to as all eyes were focused upon him. Naruto within his prison merely narrowed his as he was feeling an intense source of anger and hatred nearby, and it was approaching fast. Now then, new arrivals. Listen up and remain silent. Mui-sama. The master of Huzukijo will now speak and address you. And before long the rotund man stepped aside, allowing the person he just spoke of to step forward. He had long black hair that reached beyond his shoulders, he wore burgundy robes with yellow tassels off his shoulders and a long black cape that covered most of his body with a silver belt and soul-piercing black eyes. Naruto narrowed his own eyes a little more. He knew those eyes anywhere. Those eyes belonged to someone who had lost everything other than their life. Those eyes meant that there was nothing in the world that was greater than what he lost. They say eyes are the windows to the soul, and Naruto could see his just fine. People with those eyes were the most dangerous in the world. This man is the source of that hatred he sensed earlier. I am Wei, the master of Huzukijo. Let me explain your situation. Whatever you may have been in your former lives, the fact that you were sent here means you are no longer of any value to anyone. You have lost the faith of your village and your people and are considered a threat to the peace and stability of your village. Henceforth from now, you are all worthless. Spoke Moi, who approached Naruto and Kaizam's wooden cages and removed a seal upon them where the cages disappeared and Naruto and Kasami were allowed to stand. I'm sure you have heard of the horrible rumors about our little home. Well, I just want to tell you, they don't have to be true. So long as you do everything I say. Spoke Moi as he patrolled the lined-up criminals before stopping at Naruto, who was staring at the ground. Look me in the eye when I'm talking to you. Spoke Moi, but he received no answer as Naruto continued to stare at the ground. No, said Naruto as he continued staring, eliciting no reaction from Moi. Oh, so you would rather look at my shoes? Then take a look, said Moi as he pressed his foot on Naruto's shackles, forcing him to the ground and onto his knees. Naruto didn't make any facial expression and his body language was the same. He still wasn't intimidated from the tactics Moi was using. I know exactly who you are. Ryu Yokaze, the Yokaze no Ryu, Dragon of the Night Wind. You seem to have this false sense of indomitableness. But don't worry, we'll get rid of that in time. Now look me in the eye. Spoke Moi, and Naruto did as he was told and moved his head. His Sharingan eyes meeting Mui's, who was unafraid of those eyes, the eyes bred for war. See, isn't that better? You will all do as I say or you will pay a price. Moi then removed his foot from Naruto's shackles, allowing him to stand to full height where his eyes never left Mui's form. And unbeknownst to anyone, a woman with white hair, gray rippled eyes and wearing a green bandana was watching from her position. We of Kusagakure were tasked by the villages of the world with the mission of never allowing anyone they send to the castle to escape alive. Your personal circumstances are none of our concern and we couldn't care less about them," said Mui before forming a seal and thrusting his palm forward, hitting Naruto in the chest where his palm ignited with fire. Katan, Tenro, fire release, heavenly prison. Naruto then felt a searing coming from his chest where he gasped a little and fell to his knee and curled over a bit. He was trained to resist pain, though what he was feeling must be painful if it forces him to his knee. That imprisonment technique is unique to my clan, it has been passed down through the generations. It is the reason why Kusagakure was chosen to oversee Huzukijo and its prisoners. So long as you wear that seal you will be unable to mold your chakra," spoke Mui, where Naruto gripped the zipper on his black cloak and pulled it down, revealing the seal beneath. "There are only 2 ways to leave this place. The first is for your village to officially request your release. The second, and by far the most common, is by dying. And don't think of escaping. If you get beyond a certain reach from me, the Tenro will activate and burn you into ash. One more thing, and while we're at it, you may have heard that the Tenro is ineffective when underwater. This is true, but the surrounding lake is deep and the currents are treacherous. If you were to jump in, you would drown long before you can infuse your chakra. We're done here, get them out of my sight," spoke Mui, but just as he was about to turn around, he approached Naruto where he stood inches away from him. "We'll also be seeing each other very soon. Naruto Uzumaki." And with that said, Mui turned around, not bothering to see the shocked expression of dread on Naruto's face. Any suspicions Naruto had about the lord of the castle was confirmed to be true, as throughout the entire talk, Naruto's curse seal appeared on his arm and it was throbbing violently. He felt it when he first looked at the man. The seal appeared. That's why he refused to look at him. It would only be confirmation that he was somehow connected to the seal, which in fact were actually 5 seals, 1 seal for each mark. Naruto knew he had a past with this man, but he never remembered such an event happening before. He didn't know what to think until he broke the seal on his arm, which was impossible unless he found the person who branded it on him to remove it. Though he did know he was connected to Root, as the agents who swarmed him back in Imigakure was proof enough to know that he had a past with them. He needed to know more. If he was to discover himself, it meant breaking the seal. Later he and Kasami were dragged away by the guards for inspection. And as they were walking, the bulbous man spoke up again. As the Maisama explained, you lose any chance of escaping when he's burned his technique into you, so you're not getting out alive, so might as well get used to staying here for a very long time. Well, this place is pretty once you get used to it, spoke the man as they continued walking through the prison. Soon they made it to the cells, which were entirely made of wood, and soon the prisoners pressed themselves against the wood, checking out their new friends. "Look, your fellow prisoners are giving you a warm welcome," said the fat man as he spread out his arms, gesturing to all of the inmates. "Hey, fresh meat. These guys look like a bunch of pussies. I want the blonde guy, give me the blonde, he looks like fun, we'll give each other a good time." Naruto didn't know how to respond to that. "Welcome to hell. First, you're required to undergo a physical examination before entering your cells, your new home. That means all of you. And I'm talking about a really thorough physical exam. I'll search every inch of your bodies," spoke the man as they continued on through the prison. So now they were sitting in a metal hall on metal benches waiting to be examined by the guards. Naruto and Kasami were sitting together and finally had their shackles removed from their hands, where Kasami groaned in annoyance while Naruto was too preoccupied with his thoughts about Mui and his connection to the man. One of the new arrivals, sitting next to Naruto, turned to the blonde-haired man. "So, what are you in for?" questioned the guy as Naruto moved his eyes to look at him out of the corners, giving him a glare to which the man backed away a little in fear. Too bad. Guess I'll never know. Me, I was given a mission and well, I messed it up pretty bad. I was ordered to slaughter everything in sight from a neighboring village. But in a moment of weakness or something, I let this one damn kid go after taking pity on him, and when my village found out, I was booted here," spoke the prisoner, earning Kaisam's attention while Naruto continued to stare at him through the corners of his eyes. "It felt good, didn't killing all those people, their blood on you, cries of mercy," spoke Kasami with another of his sickly shark-like grins. "Hell yeah, it felt good. They were practically crying and wetting and shitting themselves at the same time, and just to make them shut up from all the screaming was good too," responded the prisoner as he shuffled closer to Naruto to talk to Kasami more. "I think we're gonna be good friends," spoke Kasami, his grin getting bigger. "So got any other tales? Because there was this one time, I had to massacre minus." However, Naruto zoned out from everything and instead ignored all disturbances around him. However, Naruto did sense that someone was watching, where he turned to see a woman with white hair, which was held with a striped green bandana with gray eyes with ripples in them like the Rinnegan. She wore a sleeveless kimono over a green top that had a single long left sleeve where both of her arms were bandaged up to the elbows. She wore black trousers and simple sandals. She currently looked like a man, but Naruto knew better. He was perceptive that way. You know that there's a reason we're both in here. Huzukijo is a wretched hive of villainy for those who've lost all the faith their village had in them. Spoke the woman, to which Naruto simply stared at her. His Sharingan was deactivated because of the seal, revealing his ocean blue eyes. I know what you are, and you know what I am. We both have different motives for being here. It's only a matter of time until we realize what we're both after. Thieves are thieves and murderers are murderers. They no longer have an excuse for their actions. But we're neither, so do we have excuses for our actions? And we can never run away from who we are? Continued the woman as Naruto stayed quiet and listened to her, and everything she said was true. You in the bandana. You're up. Called one of the guards. If you understand what kind of place you're in, when you look around and see you're in a deep hole, it's time to stop digging. Spoke the woman before she walked away. A few minutes later it was Naruto's turn for his physical examination. Get undressed. Ordered the same fat man as he rubbed his second chin. Naruto did so without a second thought, and stripped down to his underwear, with the guards checking his cloak, pants, gloves and boots. And the guards said that there were no weapons in the clothes, only because they were looking in the wrong place. Now jump on each leg one at a time. However, this time Naruto didn't comply and instead stared at the man. Oh, so you're a feisty one, eh? Well then guess we should make you jump on your feet. Said the fat man as he got out of his chair and walked up to Naruto, where he looked ready to hit him with his baton, and the other two guards also pulled out their batons. One of the guards attempted to hit Naruto, but he grabbed the man's arm and threw him over his shoulder and into the table, where he smashed against the wood. He soon kicked the other in the gut, so hard that he nearly coughed up his breakfast. While the fat man tried to hit Naruto with the baton, only for the blonde to charge up a fist and break the baton from the impact, and plucked the now broken baton from the air and pressed it against the fat man's throat, where some blood could be seen from the wood sticking into him, and Naruto did that without taking a step from his position. Remember, I can kill you. Spoke Naruto, where he threw the remains of the baton to the ground and redressed himself into his black cloak and left the fat man with a noticeable wet spot between his legs. Moi meanwhile was looking out across the massive lake as the sun was beginning to set. He was thinking about the resurgence of Naruto Uzumaki. He was able to remember the boy so well that he recognized him even without his characteristic whiskers. He remembered how he hired Danzo to improve the security of Huzukijo, and he sent Naruto, or by his codename back then, to Kurufu to create specific seals for Huzukijo while as a guest at the castle. It was fair to say that he was close to the boy, so close that Naruto revealed his real name to him. Naruto reminded Moi so much of his lost son Muku from their obsession to ramen and their sprightly personalities. They were a lot alike in that regard. Moi had also believed that Naruto had died at the Valley of the End. He believed the reports and the rumors. He had hoped that the boy was alive, but he gave up hope 6 months after the news had spread. He wouldn't say it, but he would keep tabs on the blonde-haired boy. When he left Root under specific conditions, while he couldn't become involved in the boy's life, it didn't mean that he wasn't watching over him. If Moi had tried anything, he could have caused an international incident, something Kusagakure didn't need. But Naruto talked about the deplorable way people treated him, and Moi did his best as a guardian angel. If he was alive, then he would be okay. But now, here he was, alive but not the same. Everything about him was different, from those eyes of his and their dead look to his appearance and aura. It was just so different. Moi couldn't explain it, but Naruto was a product of what this world could do to people. He then heard footsteps from behind him, and he recognized the person. Things have changed, Moroi. The plan needs to be altered, but still, the time is near. Retrieve him unharmed. Spoke Moi, where his assailant known as Moroi swiftly left with Moi, looking over his shoulder, with a noticeable frown on his face before turning back to look over the massive lake. By now night had set over Huzukojo. Many of the prisoners were already sorted into their cells. Naruto himself was separated from Kasami shortly after they were sorted into their cells. The only light was the small flickering of the candles upon the walls. Most of the prisoners, even the guards, were all dead asleep, slumber taking over them and their dreams becoming reality. Embers glittered of the candles, shining small amounts of light in darker places. Naruto was currently sleeping in his cell, not dreaming of anything, incapable of dreaming. He didn't notice the door to his cell open up slightly, while he remained unmoving like a statue in a courtyard. Finally he jumped off his bed only to feel a hard pressure against his neck, knocking him out and fading back into sleep, where his body slumped over with his attacker hovering over him. He can sleep soundly on his first night here. This guy's either a big shot or a big idiot. Spoke the Moroi as he covered Naruto's eyes with a blindfold and gagged his mouth with a cloth and bound his legs and arms. Soon he quickly left, but unknown to anybody a single ember drifted into Naruto's cell illuminating the darkness, and soon it flew up to a nearby corner at the roof of the cell where the ember shined in Naruto's face, showcasing his features to everyone with his burning Sharingan eyes glowing in the darkness as he clung to the wall of his cell with what little chakra he could use, his eyes narrowed and his intent certain. Soon the ember died out, losing its light where Naruto's face was also promptly lost in the darkness. Meanwhile, the Naruto they took was currently being restrained in a small laboratory, with power circuits and vials on the tables and walls, with electricity buzzing around. Naruto himself was tied to a table with strong bands, restricting his movement. Mui with his cold eyes merely watched the young man struggle against his confines, and he felt disappointed in himself at what he was doing. Moroi merely pulled down his hood cloaked, and complained how he felt like he was suffocating in the thing, while Mui paid him no attention as his eyes were trained on the young man he used to know. And soon Moroi pulled the zipper on Naruto's cloak revealing his bare muscular chest. However, Mui, of course, being astute as he was, noticed the irregularity. He gave Moroi a sharp galler where he cowered little from the cold eyes. Mui then pulled out a kunai and gutted Naruto in the chest, silencing him of his screams and where he burst into smoke from the action. "Moroi, you incompetent fool," spoke Mui before leaving the laboratory and alerting his guards of the escape. As those words were said, Naruto was currently making his escape, but he had ulterior motives as to why he escaped. But currently he was grazing by the other cells with expert speed that he was more like wind than a human. The other inmates didn't even notice or sense the presence of Naruto's movements as they were too busy sleeping. Soon Naruto saw an opening in the roof, a large hole that was begging him to escape through, above the guard's desk and the statue of the ecstasy of Saint Teresa, which Naruto mentioned was a good choice for a sculpture, adding some artistic flair to the dreary place. Moving up and jumping through the hole, not bothering to check if the guard was awake, as he wouldn't be able to detect him with such advanced stealth skills, such as his. When he made it through the hole in the roof, he flipped the hood on his cloak and snuck away into the night. He had to meet with someone, though he had no problem creating one clone. He had to deduce the number of clones he could create while under the effects of the Tenro. He also already knew that there would be hidden trapdoors on the roof, as the hole in the roof that he escaped through was meant to be there for any prisoner that was thinking of escaping. They would certainly meet an end they weren't expecting so soon. With his keen hearing, he could hear the footsteps of the guards and the scuffling about looking for him. He could also hear the growls of dogs, and they were sniffing for his scent. That was something he couldn't hide. His smell, he would have to move fast before the hounds found him. Guess there's no other choice. With so many guards and this seal on me, it won't be easy getting to the rendezvous unless I keep the guards' attention on me, spoke Naruto as he formed a seal he had used many times before in the past. Have we found him? No sir, he's elusive, but the dogs will find him soon. The guards then saw the figure of the blonde tumbling down the roof of the buildings, with an exhausted look on his face and sweat on his brow. And soon he landed on the ground in a messy heap as his bangs covered his eyes. Soon the dogs, seeing their prey, rushed over and began biting on his arms, legs and body, tearing his cloak in several places such as on his arms and shoulders. Then the guards arrived blowing on their dog whistles, shining their flashlights on the downed blonde. The dogs then howled in chorus, signaling that they had caught their prey as the guards smirked in victory at the failed escape attempt. But Naruto was smirking. They caught him already. Is this guy really an S-ranked criminal? I expected him to put up more of a fight, or run around, spoke Moroi as he leaned against the wall of Mui's office with said man staring into the flame of a candle. And like Moroi, he knew how crafty Naruto was. Mui knew that whatever Naruto did, it wasn't without purpose. Mui knew that Naruto wanted to be caught, though for what reason as it could be, was unknown to him. It also proved to Mui that Naruto was just as dangerous when he first met him. So what do we do now? Regulations and the rulebook says he should spend 3 days of solitary confinement in the disciplinary cell. You of course know that'll delay our plans by 3 days, and so long as he's in there he's untouchable. Spies of the grassfruit faction may be among the guards. Mui stared into the flame for a few more seconds before taking his leave, leaving Moroi in his office with a small grin on his face. Outside of the castle, on cliffs that weren't too far from the castle, was Naruto himself, watching the crashing waves and raging torrents with his red eyes. He was waiting for someone who was of significance to him. After Naruto's unsuccessful escape attempt, the blonde had made Cage Bunshin during the escape. While the real one remained in Huzukijo, the Cage Bunshin waited at the rendezvous point because the clone wasn't affected by the Tenro. Not knowing when the person he was waiting for would arrive, the clone merely stared out across the waters of the lake. He then saw a shadow appearing in the corner of his eye. The person had a slim figure, obviously female, with high heel boots with silver lining, black gloves same as his own, with his exact same black cloak with a high collar, a long zipper that extended all the way along the cloak, but was only zipped up from the collar to the knees, unlike his which was zipped from his collar to his waist. The cloak also had silver drawstrings decorated with silver beads hanging off the ends with a chain ornament adorned with silver beads that fastened into a loop stretched across the woman's collarbone resting slightly on her bosom. "It's good that you came," spoke Naruto as he turned to the woman who pulled down the hood of her new cloak revealing blue hair with a origami flower pinned into a bun, blue scaled flower hair clips situated on her left band, elaborate piercing and striking amber eyes. "You almost sound relieved," spoke Conan with a slight smile towards Ryu who merely smirked in response. "How are you liking the cloak? It will allow you to hide from any sort of detection aside from sight, sound and smell," spoke Naruto referring to the cloak he made for her, equipped with the same seals as his own. "It's more comfortable than I imagined," quipped Conan with the same smile. "Have you located the box?" "Yes, it's buried beneath Huzukijo. I sensed a large amount of chakra beneath the castle and an overwhelming foul despair and hatred coming from the source of the chakra when I first arrived and when I interacted with my surroundings. It's definitely here. The problem is, I don't have the time nor the patience to go after the box myself. What's worse, I fear Kisame has made some sort of rapport with the inmates and he is now frequenting his time with them. It's a rather disgusting sight as they regale themselves with tales of their goriest missions," spoke Naruto as he looked back at the castle. "Why not take the box? They're unaware that we know of its existence and its location," questioned Conan as she tried to understand Rya's reasoning. "The trouble is, getting to the box. I would rather wait for the box to surface itself and take it with force. As I've noticed peculiar movements amongst the guards, and some of the inmates, I've even noticed spies, from the other villages, none that have reported back to their villages of the presence of Kisame and myself, but I doubt the villages won't know for too long. They're obviously preparing for something, perhaps it's the two rival factions that vie for control of the box, or it's a bid between the villages to take the box, or perhaps they plan to sell the box to the highest bidder. It's uncertain at this time. But, should I label the box as a danger, I'll destroy it," discussed Naruto as so many thoughts were running through his head, and even Haumei knows him as well. Pain won't agree with such an action of destroying the box, unless the box is a danger to the Akatsuki or a Migakure," replied Conan making Naruto nod at her. "But still, you're right about the villages. Word will spread soon of your imprisonment. You have a month at most until the villages take action and come for you and Kisame. Until then don't do anything stupid. I'll lay low for a while and watch the villages' movements," spoke Conan which made Naruto nod. But then he saw something. Conan looked as if she was about to fall over, and she placed her hand on her forehead almost as if she wanted to steady herself. Naruto smirked. It was almost time. "Are you okay?" queried Naruto feigning worry. "Yeah, I just felt dizzy for a moment. Maybe I've been working too hard," said Conan as she was hit by another wave of dizziness until his steadily left her system. She felt like she was about to fall over, to which she did as she lost her footing. She braced herself for the impact, but felt a strong arm across her back and another across her chest, where she saw Ryu, holding her form with his Sharingan deactivated, allowing her to see his soft blue eyes. With his help, she regained her footing and steadied herself. "I should find a place to rest," she stated, to which Naruto nodded, where her body split into many paper butterflies while the clone of Naruto disappeared in a plume of smoke. Meanwhile the real Naruto was in the disciplinary cell, sitting cross-legged with his hands situated on his knee. He then felt the flux of memories from his clone where he grinned. "Things are falling into place. Well then, time to work on this new technique," spoke Naruto as he was in the perfect place where he wouldn't be bothered by anything. He then pulled up the sleeve on his right arm, exposing some of his bare arm where he bit into his arm, drawing blood and allowing it to drip onto his hand. He then clapped both of his hands together and closed his eyes, focusing on mastering this new technique. In the Land of Fire, capital at Inzi Husoku's mansion, said owner of the mansion was wandering through the halls heading to his kitchen. It had been a hectic day for him with the riot and his dealings with the Kakuren. It had been exhilarating also. His body didn't even feel tired. He felt like he could do that again and again for a while month. Sakura had went to sleep pretty quickly, hoping to forget the day and its events, even though some of her memory was tampered with because of her experience with the Kakuren. Kenga was fittingly kicked out of the house when he served no further need. Also, the Kakuren soldiers that had escorted the three of them back to the mansion were still skulking around the area unseen by anyone. He needed to keep the Kakuren secret, everything depended upon it. When he arrived in the kitchen, he didn't even look at the figure, sitting on a chair near a table, staring at him with their blood-red eyes trained on him, watching his every movement, every muscle, every breath of life. The one sitting in the dark was wearing a black cloak with his hood down, allowing only those with sharp eyes could see the golden hair in the glinting moonlight. As Inzi was getting a glass out of his cupboard, he knew of the presence within his kitchen. He could not have been unaware of the man's presence, as his aura radiated through the mansion. Inzi could also feel that the air was tense and the temperature dropped. It would have been hard to breathe for anyone who was not accustomed to the dense atmosphere. The truth is, he had been dealing with the person for a number of months now. And yet even now things were going smoothly for all of them, no deaths just yet or accidents. "Glass of water," said Inzi as he poured water into the glass he had just retrieved, though the blonde-haired man was unimpressed or too focused on his objective to care in the least. Just as Inzi had sat down by the table did some of the full moonlight shine ever brighter, revealing for just a split second the face of Naruto Uzumaki with his glowing red Sharingan eyes. "Kusoku-sama. I am done for the night, I'll be seeing you tomorrow," said a maid who was around the corner and by the door of the mansion. "All right, see you tomorrow, good night," spoke Inzi, intent on not waking Sakura. He then turned back to Naruto, who was still looking at him with an impassive gaze. Inzi already knew that the blonde was not pleased with the progress of the diplomat. Naruto had spent too much time and energy helping the man, and yet seeing no results come to fruition, the blonde was both patient and impatient. He was willing to begrudgingly wait for Inzi to make his move, while also, though that means he didn't have to like it, clear signs was when he would look at you with his eyes slightly narrowed and his Sharingan were glowing. "So he sent a Cage Bunshin, of course, since our connection was severed not too long ago. He sent you to relay any information?" "Well, I can say this, all your work with the unrest in the Land of Fire has been beneficial, but it's not enough. Our Kakuren soldiers have been doing what they can, but we need to incite the public some more. And I'm guessing you know what to do already. Why am I asking this question when we have the same thoughts? We will need to advance our plans and change your direct orders for now, until we can clean up this mess that you made. Until then, just keep up what we're doing. May I direct your attention to the files on my table?" Naruto's Sharingan eyes then looked toward a couple of files with different names. "Know them." Inzi opened the files for Naruto as his blood-red eyes searched over the paper, with his form not moving at all. He of course knew what this meant, killing off the weakest so the strong could survive. Upon the files were different names of nobles and diplomats, each one presenting a threat to Inzi and Naruto's plan. There was Kenka and his family, the Daio and his family and closest associates, many delegates and diplomats, the spies of every and all who play the game of shadows and lies, the great game. You win or lose, and whether or not you win, you might just die. Naruto then turned to the last file where his eyes spoke the truth. This last person was of significance to him, both in his past life and current one, the person to whom he blindly loved, the key word being loved, as in not having any form or emotion for the person. The last name on the list was Sakura Haruno, the delegate from Konoha. All of them must be killed, and I know about Sakura. As much as it pains me, she still has to die, but not until we've achieved our objective. Only after, unless we can persuade them, spoke Inzi, making Naruto's eyes turn back upon him. "Kill their families too, can't have anybody continue their relatives' work?" spoke Inzi, to which Naruto's empty gaze was interpreted as a yes to the man. However, Naruto kept sitting there, his eyes unmoving, his form stalwart. That was everything Inzi needed to know, that Naruto would take care of any and all events that are to come, and Inzi had a fair guess as to what Naruto would do. They were one and the same. As Inzi was sipping on his glass of water, the same maid from earlier came out from around the corner. "I'm sorry, Husoku-sama, I left my wallet here," said the young maid as she saw Inzi and Naruto sitting by the table. Her mind began racing as to what was happening, and she seemed to get the feeling that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Oh, I wished you had knocked," spoke Inzi with a sigh before straining his right arm towards the maid, where two daggers, shaped like feathers, penetrated her body before she could even make a sound, landing with a thud and a dead look in her eyes, and Naruto remaining unfazed from the violent murder. Such a shame.